I've been in high-ticket software and startup sales for the last 8 years. I've personally closed millions of dollars in software deals. I've managed SDRs and account executives across 3 separate continents. In the next few minutes, I want to share the most tips and tricks that I can possibly think of to save you time and frustration. So let's get into it. We are going to go over, if I were to start my sales career now, what would I do? What a typical career path looks like in software sales in 2025 and beyond. The importance of showing up in person when it's possible. The importance of deep diving into how technology actually works. The importance of demonstrating your research on the first call. Putting in extra effort at every single step of the sales funnel and how much further that will get you ahead in deals. Never send pricing, always present it, and how to handle pricing objections. If I were to start my sales career now, you'd have to realize that it's a mixture of hard skill of technology and actually knowing how to use technology, how to implement technology, what's an API, how do things integrate, all that sort of stuff, as well as the soft skills that you have to have during sales of speaking, cold calling, and just grinding your teeth. That is never going to change. People buy from people. That's just a universal truth. The difference from when I started versus now is the use of technology at scale, particularly in the US. So I would be researching all of the major sales tech platforms that are coming up, Clay.com being probably one of the most important. I would look at which channels are the most effective for which industries. So learn how email marketing works, learn how LinkedIn marketing works. If you're in the Facebook ad space, Instagram ad space, all that sort of stuff. What are the different channels to promote and to sell your product? There are a lot of courses out there to learn these tech stacks. You can fake implement stuff. You can play around with Clay. A lot of these platforms have free subscriptions, weekly trials, whatever it is. But I would get familiar with those platforms and how they work, because sales isn't just a sales job anymore. You have to have some level of knowledge of how technology works, particularly at the beginning. The typical career path back in the day was going from a business development rep or an SDR or something to an account executive, to an enterprise account executive, strategic account executive, to sales manager, up to CRO, potentially CEO at some point. Now the beginning part of that has changed. SDRs are much more efficient, and they are required to know how the tech stack in the background actually works for prospecting. List building, personalization at scale, integrating different channels, multi-channel outreach, as well as the soft skills of cold calling and just, grinding your teeth at the very, very beginning, understanding how to do discovery, understand how to ask questions. So if I were to go back and do it right now, I would definitely learn the hard skills of the tech stack a lot faster, as well as get as many sales conversations as I possibly can to fail and learn and iterate. I hinted at it before, but a career path has slightly changed in tech sales, I would say. It used to be very linear. You get a sales development job, you manually send emails, you manually send LinkedIn messages, you manually DM people on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc., etc. Now there's a lot more automation and everyone has access to it. It is ubiquitous across the industry. There are still ways you can stand out, of course, there always will be. But now the job at the beginning, particularly in the startup space, is a lot more technical, I would say. Mastering those technical skills and having the title of a GTM engineer, which is still relatively new, is a potential start now. You need to have a good understanding of how to define a customer profile. What does that even mean? How do you collect this data? How do you manage this data? How do you tag this data? How do you run campaigns, etc., etc.? So that's slightly different right at the beginning. You will never, ever get rid of the value of just making 120 calls a day. That is super important at the beginning. You're going to learn how to handle a rejection, objections as well. People are going to tell you no and to F off. It happens all the time. You need to build that thick skin in order to get the promotion to an account executive. Generally handles closing and sales conversations, depending on the size of organization you're in. This is much more product knowledge. You need to be somewhat technical. Buyers are doing their own research much more than they were 8 years ago online before they enter into a sales conversation. With the rise of content like this, you can get to know the founder, you can get to know the business, you can get to know the product. Online demos exist, pricing might exist, depends on the ACV of the product. but buyers are becoming much more aware before they get on calls. So you need to counteract that by knowing your stuff, whether that's fortunate or unfortunate. It is effort. You should know what product you're selling and what problem you're solving. Then when you move up into more enterprise rep, strategic rep, sales manager, that's where all of the stuff that I just outlined is expected. You need to have an understanding of how the very top of the funnel works, and also have the skills to be able to present, whether that's over Zoom, whether that's in person. You will get into that next, that you cannot underestimate the value of in-person conversations these days. So typical career path now, you could start as an SDR, go into an account executive, strategic account executive. The other option that I see right now is being more of a marketing type person, database type person, GTM engineer, and then moving up in that same way. Now, I know in the world of Zoom and, post-COVID and everything, everyone is very used to being on Zoom now. I'm on Zoom all day and filming stuff in front of my computer. A lot of what we do is virtual. I think people now underestimate the value of in-person meetings, dinners, events, cocktail hours, one-on-one meetings, etc., office visits. The reason why it's underestimated is because it feels easy and scalable to do things on Zoom, which it is, don't get me wrong. However, let me play a scenario for you. You're going into a deal, high level deal, $100,000, $80,000, $150,000, whatever it is. You are doing meetings over Zoom. You have met the decision maker. You've met one tier down, and you're yet to really meet the technical team. Your competitor has met the decision maker. They've met one tier down, and they've gone to an in-person office visit and taken the person out for lunch. I guarantee you, they know more about that customer than you do. They're going to have a tighter presentation. They are going to use keywords that the prospect used at that dinner in their presentation and trigger something in their head. There's no way that if you've had an hour-long conversation with someone in person, you didn't make some level of personal connection if you're a half-decent human being and half-decent sales rep. That competitor will probably win that deal just because they put in more effort, took the flight, took the train, took the bus, drove there, walked there, whatever. They met that person face-to-face, made a connection, learned more about their business, learned more about their challenges, and were able to pitch their product 10 times better than you, and probably get insider information on how you're pitching your product. So never underestimate that value. Yes, we live in a world of Zoom, but in-person will pay off. There used to be a trope in the software sales industry that you don't really need to know how the product works. Maybe that was true. I don't even think that was true 8 years ago when I first started. It's definitely not true now. Like I said before in the introduction, buyers are doing their own research prior to the call. They know something about the product. They have some brand awareness, most likely, and they know how the technology works and how it'll fit into that stack. It's your job to just guide them along that journey and obviously lead them to a sales decision, proof of concept, trial, whatever it is. I think now more than ever, you should have a very decent level understanding of technology. You don't need to be an engineer. You don't need to be, the most technical person in the world and know exactly how the code works, etc., etc. But you should be an expert in your product and the integration landscape and the market landscape, for sure. You'll thank me later. I'll give you an example of how I actually put this into practice. In my first job, cybersecurity service provider, I had zero technology experience, didn't know how it worked, never studied computer science, no clue. So what did I do? I went to my boss and I said, hey, here's my situation. I know nothing, right? That's literally how I started the conversation. You can ask him. I said, if you were me and you had to figure out how technology works, how does the internet actually work? How would you do it? He was like, whoa, okay. Let me think back to my college days, basically. He gave me documents on the OSI model. He gave me some IBM report that was like 150 pages or something. And he said, read it. That's when I started to understand layers of the OSI model. I started to understand when I click send on my laptop on an email, what actually happens in the background. Like, shock, right? I didn't know anything, so I came in green. That was probably the best thing I ever did, because especially in cybersecurity, when people were in an office, it really helped to understand like perimeter of firewalls, just things like that, basic stuff. And the OSI model, again, super important. But understanding the absolute fundamentals and basics will get you so far ahead of every other salesperson, because you'll be able to dissect problems in real time and speed up deal cycles. If you have to go back from a first discovery call and say, oh, I've got a question about this, let me ask the SE when I get off of this call, or let me ask the founder to get you an answer. If you had that answer right there, you could address it straight away. So very important, be an expert. No longer are the days of a sales rep who doesn't know how a product works. Pre-call research, very important for a discovery call, obviously, but it's more important how you actually use it. So great that you have everything written on a document and you've done the research, but you need to portray that to the prospect. What I do in all of my founder meetings, I typically say, hey, saw you got $2.6 million in funding. Congratulations. I had a look at your website. This is roughly the idea of what I think you do, X, Y, Z. Would love to hear it from your end. Something as simple as that. Now they know you know the industry. I've already projected out what I think their ICP will be. So when we get to that part of the discussion, I can talk about their target customers, their profiles, job titles, etc., etc. And it just shows that you've come in prepared. Obviously, the more preparation you do, the better. We're all time constrained. I get it. Figuring out some sort of process that works for you. Once you've done it a few times, I can do pre-call research in 5 minutes. At the very beginning, you're probably going to have to spend half an hour. Probably going to have to get over the nerves, write it all down, get a document, get all your questions down, and demonstrate that you've actually done the research is the key. I have a general rule of thumb for everything that I do business-wise, and it is put in effort, as much effort as possible, along the way for every single thing that you do. That's the same thing with selling. So when I say extra effort, I mean at the very beginning of a conversation, a prospecting call, a LinkedIn message, a cold email, an Instagram DM, whatever it is, more personalization, the better. That just means more effort. Great. You get on a call, more pre-call research, more discovery. Again, extra effort. Next call, instead of just having a single deck that you present to everyone or the same demo that you present to everyone, have a slide where it's like, here's what we spoke about last time. Here's your challenges. Is that correct? Anything else to add? Get another question in. Effort at every single stage of the funnel will get you further ahead than your competition, for sure. This one took me a while to learn. Never send pricing, always present it. Now, this isn't true for every single industry, but particularly in somewhat high ticket tech sales, this is 100% true. If you send pricing via email, it's easier than presenting it. It's quicker, it's faster. They see the price, great. It never works. Unless you're an established business, like you're working for Cisco or, Salesforce or something, even then, whatever. If you're in a startup or a technology company that not everyone knows, it's a relatively new space, do not just send pricing via email, via text, anything. Always present it. Always rehash the challenges. Always ask more questions. Always link your pitch back to what they've told you and then present the pricing and explain it. Pricing is never just a number. It's tied to a guarantee. It's tied to a deliverable. It's tied to a trial. It's tied to a term. There's payment options. You can split payments, etc., right? There's a million different ways. When you have a complicated pricing structure and you send that to a prospect, I honestly don't even know what they do with it. They probably don't read it. They probably look at a number. They don't understand how it's tied to value and business objectives. They have to present it to their CFO. They might have to present it to their manager. It is pointless. Never send pricing. Always present it. The truth is about pricing objections is they're rarer than you think. So a lot of the time, it's not actually a price objection. It's a value objection, meaning they haven't understood what this number means enough to make a decision. So when you present pricing, go through it, explain the value, get to the price and say, what do you think about that? What's your initial reaction? And just get a read of the room. Some people are honest. Some people are a little bit nervous. Some people get weird talking about money. That's fine. You have to be prepared for all scenarios. If you leave it very open, what's your initial thoughts? You'll get at least a temperature check. Some people are going to open up and say, way out of budget. We had $50,000 for this. There's just no way that we can afford it. Cool. Now you have a conversation to be had. Some people will say, no, it looks good. That's the one to look out for. That means they may not be opening up as much as you would like them to. You have to ask this question for those types of prospects multiple times in different ways. So what do you initially think of the price? See what they say. Say, oh, it looks good. Okay. Was that within budget? Have you expected that? Did you have that budget set aside already? Like, What does that number mean to you? See what they say. Some people say, no, it's good. Yep. Looks fine. Those ones are always worrying. That's when you go into, okay, I want to get a temperature check on how you're feeling about this. Do you mind if I ask you, or have your permission to ask you some direct questions? On a scale from 1 to 10, I love this question. On a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being this call is silly, not going to fit my requirements, the product doesn't make sense. 10 being, I love this guy, here's my number, let me sign up right now. Where are you on that spectrum? This is when you're asking the same question, right? They're either going to buy it or they're not going to buy it. They will answer that question very differently to how do you feel about the price initially. So great. Usually you'll get to some pain point that isn't price related. Oh, I didn't understand that this was only for LinkedIn outreach or only for email, or okay, we actually did email before and it didn't really work for us. I'm not really feeling it. Okay, cool. Now we can talk about the service deliverables. This is an example for my business for a software product. Obviously there's different pricing packages and different ways of handling these objections, but you get the idea. You need to have 3, 4, 5 different ways of asking, what do you think about the price, to actually get to the objection. Hard pricing objections, meaning like it's actually just that number, otherwise I'd buy it, are a lot rarer than you think, especially in mid-market enterprise B2B sales. They just want to see value. Remember, they're not spending their money. This is not out of their wallet on their card. This is the company's money. They're deciding how the company spends their money. It's a very different ballgame. It's not them making the decision. It's a team making the decision, a business making the decision. So they're a lot rarer than you think. You need to ask the same question 5, 6 times to get an answer. Look, to wrap this up, in the last 8 years, I've definitely learned a lot along the way. I've had very junior jobs up to sales manager jobs and CRO type roles. It's been very fun. The one thing that you'll never, ever replace in this world is hard work. I've worked on the weekends for the last 5 years, I would say. Particularly since starting this business, I've worked Saturday and Sunday every single weekend without fail. Even if it's just 2 hours, it's 2 hours that you'll never, get back. You've invested it well. So hard work, perseverance, not taking things personally, trying new things. They're all very common forms of advice, but they hold true.